Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Now, it is the end of the month of February, and that means it's time for the rundown. So just before I get into the stories I have for you today, I'm just going to let you guys know that I've decided to have the rundown be these longer videos than the usual short ones I do. And the reason for that is because there will be quite a few stories each month that I'd like to get through, so that's why I'm going to have them as a longer video. So let's get into it. So the first story is one that I've actually got personal experience with, and that was Storm Ciara and Storm Dennis. Now, Storm Ciara hit Ireland pretty hard on the 9th of February, and Storm Dennis hit about a week later. Now, I want to talk about my experience with it at the airport, because that's how I kind of experienced the chaos with it. So, the main problem at the airport was the winds. And it wasn't the speed of the winds, although that was a bit of a problem. The main problem was the direction, because the winds were blowing across the main runway instead of down it. And the reason why that causes such a problem is that the jet aircraft, the Aer Lingus Airbus A320 and the Ryanair 737 Boeing aircraft can't use the other runway because it's too short for them. Now the smaller Aer Lingus ATRs can, so they were able to take off and land no problem, but the jet aircraft couldn't use them. And that caused quite a lot of problems. There were many cancellations, many delays. There was, like, just to give you an example, the Malaga flight going out was delayed about 8 hours. Like, it was supposed to be out at, I think it was 1:30, and it didn't get out until, I think it was 8:20 or something like that. Oh no, sorry, 9:20, sorry. But to be honest, though, those cancellations and delays led to a lot of angry passengers, as you can imagine. And to be honest, though, I made the mistake of staying in the departure lounge. I stayed outside while all these delays and cancellations were happening. So that meant, and as I was wearing my high-vis vest, which it's my work gear, that everyone saw someone in a high-vis vest and goes, that person will know what's going on. Which, of course, I did not, because I don't actually work for the airport. I work for a contractor for the airport, OCS. Now, while I do think that was a mistake, I don't actually. I actually was okay with that. Now, the reason I was okay with staying up there was because it was just in case a flight came in, like, because the ATR regionals were still going. So I was going out to them every now and again when I could, if there was any passenger for assistance off them. Now, there was one family in particular, and I'm not going to name them, but they had 3 children who had disabilities. Now, one was in his own wheelchair, and he was the one down for assistance. But as you can, one of them had dyspraxia, like myself. Another one had Asperger's, if I can remember correctly, and the the boy in the wheelchair had it was something with his brain, if I can recall correctly. And obviously, they were really, really bored, as you can imagine. But to be honest, though, I actually kind of started having a conversation with them, and we talk about pretty much everything, and a lot of it kind of bordered around aircraft, because we were at an airport, and plus I know so much about aircraft that I kept them interested. And what was handy, because I had my work tablet with me, and I actually have the same app on my personal phone, is Flight Radar, and I was actually showing them where all the planes were flying. And so, I'm not gonna lie, I enjoyed the conversation I had with that family, and I kept them interested, because I would only dread to see what would happen if they didn't have some form of kind of way to keep themselves interested with this, because it's not easy to spend 8 hours at an airport and keep yourself occupied without going mad. So I'm not gonna lie, I did enjoy that conversation, and they finally went on the holiday, and I hope they had a good time. Now, one thing I will say is that I was actually quite surprised with how society in general took the storms. And like when it came to power outages, they were fixed pretty quickly. There was not much of a delay like there was when Storm Ophelia hit a couple of years ago. Now, and to be honest though, like, it was pretty bad for us because we lost all power here in our house. So yeah, Ophelia wasn't friendly to us, but it was clear that we had learned quite a bit from our previous experiences with storms. I mean, the power outages were fixed at a reasonable speed. And to be honest, in the aftermath of the storms, there wasn't that much disruption. Things kind of just started going. Now, fair enough, there were little pieces here and now, but they got solved at a reasonable speed. And again, I think a lot of that has to be our experience with storms in the past. We have quite a lot of experience with storms, and that's why we were so able to take this one. So the next story is a bit of a sad one. It's the suicide of Love Island presenter Caroline Flack. Now, Caroline Flack committed suicide after the Crown Prosecution Service, CPS, announced that they would go ahead with charges against her for domestic violence against her boyfriend, after he actually walked back his support of the prosecution. Now, it's an interesting story when you look at the background, I think, and it is tragic, and it did raise a point that we need to be very mindful of those accused of crimes and their mental health, as well as the accusers. And now, one thing I'm going to preface this by saying, the reason I'm saying accuser and accused is because I don't know if the claims of domestic violence are true or not. So I'm not going to make a decision on whether she was innocent or guilty in that. I'm not going to lie, the Crown Prosecution Service, CPS, were put in a very tough spot after this, Because for a long, long time, women's rights groups were kind of pushing them to continue with prosecutions even when the accuser had pulled back their support of the prosecution. And CPS responded by doing that. They responded that even if the accuser didn't, if the accuser walked back their support for the prosecution, that they'd go anyway in the interest of justice. And to be honest, that's not something I disagree with. I think that's the right way to go. Because justice should be served when something like this happens. And now, after Caroline Flack's death, after her suicide, those same women's rights groups are actually angry at CPS for continuing with the prosecution. What were they supposed to do? I mean, for ages you've been pushing them to continue these kinds of things, and then when they do, you get angry because they did exactly what you told them to do. So there have been many calls from men's advocacy groups that there should be kind of support for those accused of serious crimes as well as the accusers. And again, I do 100% agree with that. And I think my thoughts on this is that there should be very strong support for both the accuser and the accused. And the reason for it is that it's hard for a victim to come forward. But it's also hard to be accused of such a heinous crime. And so, kind of the support should be there until the result is declared, until guilty or not guilty has been announced. Now, this case does raise many problems as well, particularly with the double standards in terms of support for male victims of domestic violence. Now, again, I'm not saying that she's guilty, but it does kind of put that fact that men are victims of domestic violence into the spotlight. And it's also support for those accused, whether those accused are male or female. Now, I will go into a little bit more depth on this in a video I'm planning at the moment, because I'm planning to talk about the Amber Heard and Johnny Depp domestic violence case that's going on at the moment. That should be out within the next few weeks. And I want to go quite into a bit more detail on that, but like that story, both of these stories share kind of a lot of similarities in that. And so it's an interesting topic. And I know we'll hear a lot more about it in the coming weeks. So, next topic comes from the States, and that is the chaos taking place within the Democratic Party at the moment. And there is so much being thrown left, right and centre is that it's so hard to keep up. I mean, the Democratic debates are to be honest, they're mad. And there is a common theme going around that the winner of each of these debates is Donald Trump. because it's so chaotic. And you can kind of see what they mean, because there's so much divide in the Democratic Party at the moment that it's hard to see how they're going to kind of go behind any candidate. So, who are actually the frontrunners? Well, at the moment, Bernie is the frontrunner, Bernie Sanders. Now, he's a democratic socialist, which doesn't go well, as we've seen in the past. Now, weirdly enough, there is no particular candidate. There's no one in second place. In second place, there's actually no one will get the nomination. That's just sad, really. And it's either, it's been a while since I've actually seen this, it's either Bloomberg or Buttigieg is third. I think it's Bloomberg. I'll talk about him in a second. Now, the first Democratic caucus had quite a few problems, particularly with the voting system. And there was a 3-day delay in the results coming out. Now, when they eventually came out, Pete Buttigieg won it in the kind of second round. Despite the fact that Bernie Sanders, who was in second place, won the popular vote. Which is kind of interesting, because that's actually how the American presidential election works. There's the popular vote, then there's the electoral college. And so Democrats have been going, we should get rid of the electoral college. It's an archaic system. And the reason for that is because in 2016 Donald Trump won the electoral college vote, which is why he's in the White House, but Hillary Clinton actually won the popular vote. And so they're going, we should get rid of the electoral college. Not going to happen. And now here's a situation where they're arguing for the other way around. They don't want a popular vote in their own caucus, in their own primary vote, because if that happened in Iowa, then Bernie Sanders would have won. And I'll talk about that in a second. I should talk about it now, fair enough. The problem is that the members of the party, the ground members of the party, want Bernie Sanders as the Democratic nominee. However, party management don't want Bernie. Originally they wanted Joe Biden, but then his campaign kind of fell flat. And I think they want Bloomberg now, but the reason, and it kind of came out recently, that a lot of the high people in the Democratic Party want Bloomberg. Sounds like a lot of them actually got money from Bloomberg. But the other candidates, including Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Buttigieg, all of them kind of have been going after Bloomberg for a lot of the stuff he's said in the past, including seriously sexist stuff. And even Elizabeth Warren said that, right, what he said about women is actually worse than what Trump said about women. And I agree with him on that. But the amount of money that Bloomberg has spent on this election already, even though his campaign hasn't been going on very long. It kind of makes you wonder: is there a bit of, well, it doesn't make you wonder if there's corruption in the party. There is. We know that, but is there corruption to the point where it's that bad? Now, when it came to the voting system in Iowa, many people believe that the system was rigged to prevent Bernie Sanders from getting the nomination. While there isn't any evidence to support that, there ain't no. The official explanation is that the voting app used to report the voting totals malfunctioned. It wasn't working right. A lot of people do believe, though, that it was rigged against Bernie. Now, while there's no evidence for that, I do see what they mean. Because remember the fact that they did this last time as well. Right, and a lot of evidence came up with this afterwards, that a lot of the primary elections, primary caucuses in the Democratic Party were actually rigged last time against Bernie Sanders in favour of Hillary Clinton. Now, all this has been building up to pretty much one of the most important dates of the election years, and that is what's called Super Tuesday. Now, this is actually when the vast majority of both Republican and Democratic caucuses actually vote. They take place on, it's this coming Tuesday, it's the 3rd of March, and Trump will definitely win the Republican nomination, and in terms of the Democratic one, I do think Bernie will get it, unless Elizabeth Warren and Bloomberg do something incredible. But I can't see that, really, because they've been really, their campaigns have been really, really struggling. But I'm not gonna lie, so was Bernie's. I think the reason why a lot of the members want Bernie is that while, yes, he's a democratic socialist, but the truth is they all are. He's much more open about his thoughts. He's much more open about his opinions. And while I don't agree with him on much, you kind of have to give him a bit of respect for that. Because a lot of the others, they aren't being honest at all. To be honest, like, you can see that even here in Ireland. A lot of our politicians aren't honest with their opinions either. So, next up, we're going back over to the UK now, with Brexit. Now, particularly the Brexit talks in the trade negotiations. Now, for those of you who've been living under a rock for the past 2 or 3 months, the UK have finally left the European Union. But now there's a transition period that's scheduled to go until the end of the year, where the UK can now negotiate with the EU for a trade agreement. However, there's quite a bit of difference between what the UK and what the EU wants. And the UK wants to be able to make its own rules regarding trade, border security, and a lot of other stuff. However, the EU want the UK to be in they want the UK to follow what's called an equal playing field rules. And basically what that means is that it's a set of rules that both the EU and the UK follow. The reason for this is so that the UK can't get what the EU sees as an unfair advantage in the global market. Although I think the problem, and that kind of goes to the problem with the EU, they don't want competition. They never did. And, like, why is it that the EU don't want the UK to be able to trade with other countries, like the US? It's quite simple. They'll lose. And they know the UK can make a lot more in terms of trade than the EU could with the UK. Well, it's that the UK will make more from outside the EU than within it in an open world situation. But to those who go with the EU, who are on the EU side of things, that's what Brexit was all about. But the UK becoming an independent nation where it makes its own rules, where they make up their own, well, they strengthen their own borders, but also they have their own rules. They can make their own trade agreement with any country in the world and not be hindered by rules from what a lot of Brexiteers see as a super state kind of hanging over their heads. Now, there's so much disagreement that there is actually rumours of a no deal. Now, these rumours are that Boris Johnson will actually go for a no deal if talks haven't progressed a significant amount after June. Now, of course, these are just rumours. We don't actually know if they're true or not, or if he actually said this. And if it is true, we actually don't know what he means by progress. What significant progress is for June. So, yeah, but one thing I will say, EU is panicking. Because they know that if the UK do get a chance to do trade deals with other countries like the US, they'll lose out on a serious, they'll have a serious disadvantage, and they don't want that. Now, I'm going to actually kind of end this on a positive note, and that is the new face of the £50 note, which is Alan Turing. So who is Alan Turing? Well, people like me who run in computer circles knows who Alan Turing is. Basically, and anyone who knows basically World War II and German communication during World War II knows who Alan Turing is. Because in the Second World War, the Germans, the Nazis, were using an updated version of a Polish encryption code called Enigma. And basically, they had everyone who had what's called an Enigma machine could encrypt and decrypt messages with this code. But this code was incredibly complex. I think there's actually a very good video on a channel I really like, Because Science with Kyle Hill, and one of his earlier videos was on the Enigma code and the Enigma machine, and what was it? I think it was over 515 quintillion possible combinations, and so that was a level unseen in cryptography before. However, Alan Turing broke it. He broke it because now this guy, he was a mathematical genius, and he was so far ahead of his time. He found Enigma's flaw. Now, essentially, what that flaw was that no letter could be encrypted as itself. So what does that mean? Well, it means that if you typed in A into the Enigma machine, it would never come back as A. It would never be encrypted as itself. It would never be encrypted as A. And that gave a clue into how Enigma worked. So you could work backwards from that. And basically, they could do it. However, it would take them months to do one code. But the problem is the code changed every day. So yeah, they needed something a bit quicker. And Turing basically made something that could do it quicker in terms of pretty much the very first computer. It was called the bombe, BOMBE. And this could go through every single possible combination of an Enigma machine and basically crack the code in about 20 minutes. That was incredible. Basically, this guy created the first computer with his team. And there was actually a biopic that I really want to see. It's called The Imitation Game, where it stars Benedict Cumberbatch as Alan Turing. And it goes on about this story. But it is an incredible story. And there is actually there's a great myth about Apple computers, where the logo is a tribute to Alan Turing, because basically Alan Turing committed suicide. Even though he made all these huge accomplishments, he was actually prosecuted for his homosexuality. And he committed suicide soon after that. And, basically, he did it by eating a poisoned apple. And so a lot of people think that the apple with the bite taken out of it, that is the Apple logo, is a tribute to Alan Turing. Unfortunately, Steve Jobs, when he was alive, came out and said, "It's not true. I really do. I wish it was, but it's not true. The actual reason is that it's to provide scale, so it's not mistaken as a cherry. Although I don't think it would have been. So, even though his life ended very prematurely because of a stupid reason, I think. The fact that he was prosecuted for his homosexuality. To be honest, this was back in the time when homosexuality wasn't accepted. Thank God it is now. But it's kind of sad. Like, how much more good would this guy have done? Because his work reduced the length of World War II by an estimated 2 years. That's a huge amount of time. And how many more lives, if World War II went 2 years longer, how many more lives would have been lost? So he saved countless lives with his work. And also, he basically he's the father of computer science. And a lot of the technological advancements that he made to create the bombe, the first ever computer, really, is actually, a lot of that technology is still used in a lot of devices these days. The core functionality is basically along the same lines. So now I think it was fairly recently. I think it was 2007. I think where that prosecution was expunged. It was not expunged. It was basically the government. I think it was the British government. Basically forgave him. Well, not only forgave him, is basically admitted they were wrong to prosecute him for his homosexuality, and pardoned him. That's the word I was looking for. And so I'm actually happy they're honouring him with being on the £50 note. Like, I do plan to go over to England in pretty soon, so I'm hoping I may get one, maybe, but who knows. Like, if I do, I won't throw it away. I'll keep it as a good memento, because that would be pretty cool. And to be honest, that's it's a bit of a good story to end on. Bit of a long one, really, but it's a story definitely worth telling. And it's a good story to end on, I think. So I hope you guys liked this video. It's a bit longer than the rest of my videos. And to be honest, I do suspect the rest of my rundowns will be like this. And also, they're not going to be edited, really. This is a long form video. They've just gone start to finish. Not going to start or anything in the middle. It's just going to be straight through. There was a lot this month, sorry. But to be honest, there was good and bad. And I think it's important to look at the good things as well as the bad. So I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, smash that thumbs up button. Also, if you guys have a different thought, or you think there should have been a story that I should have covered in this that I didn't, throw them in the comment section down below. I really would like to hear your thoughts on these stories, or any stories that you come up with. And if you like the videos that I make, smash that subscribe button, and don't forget to hit that bell icon so you guys get notified when I upload new videos. So this was the rundown for February 2020. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.